This podcast is proudly sponsored by Gyro Drilling. They provide world-class drilling solutions for all types of projects. They specialise in auger, air core and RC drilling. Head to the team at Gyro Drilling for all your mining needs and see how they can help you with your upcoming project. Hello, I'm Ben Kostrich and this is the Market Bull Podcast. As this podcast grows, every subscriber helps. From those of you who watch this on YouTube or to those that listen on Spotify and Apple, every follower helps. If you do this one favour and hit follow on whatever platform you find us on, I promise I will continue to look and find fascinating people across the world and bring their perspectives to you. Thank you and enjoy this episode. So hello, I'm Ben Kostrich and this is the Market Bull Podcast. Joining me on the show today is Gary Harvey, the Managing Director of Rincon Resources. We last spoke around September, episode 62, for those that want to go back and delve through the whole history. But of course, a lot has changed since then. So welcome back to the show, Gary.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me again.
That's all right. The buzz of the new year, we're already into April. You've been putting out a fair bit of announcements. But before we go through a lot of the West Arunta activity and news flow, can you just remind listeners a little bit about what Rincon Resources is and just some of the targets and what you're trying to achieve?
Sure. So for new listeners and people who aren't aware of Rincon, we're a West Australian explorer, essentially. And we have three projects in Western Australia. We have the South Telfer project, which is in the Patterson Range, East Pilbara region, that's near the Telfer gold mine. We have our West Arunta project, which is in central west east WA, near the West Australian border and the Northern Territory border. And we have a gold project, the Laverton Gold Project, in the Eastern Goldfields, right near the town of Laverton, which is what the project's named after. So all those projects are being explored. We've been exploring them for the last 2 years. Last year the year before, we focused a fair bit on Telfer, but this year we're really diving into the West Arunta project.
And that's really where most of this conversation is going to focus on, because that's where, as you said, a lot of the focus is now on West Arunta. So let's talk about that region firstly. What is that area of Western Australia known for, and what's really been unfolding recently that's highlighted the emphasis for the company to go there?
Yeah, sure. So, historically, the West Arunta project, the project we have right now, was explored by one of our founding directors. Now, that's how it came into the Rincon portfolio. The region's really well known for copper, for gold, rare earths, uranium, other base metals. Mainly on the Northern Territory side of the border, but if you head towards the western end of the province, the West Arunta region, you start to get into an area that's had relatively underexplored for a long time. There's been a little bit here and there, but the potential was first identified. It wasn't first identified by Ashburton, but Ashburton Minerals did a lot of the work prior to this project coming into Rincon. And one of the main areas that Ashburton focused on was the Pokali prospect. Now, that's an IOCG copper gold prospect. It's our number one prospect. We're drilling there right now. And Ashburton did a certain amount of work up to a certain time, and for administration reasons, I think at the time, the project was unfortunately lost, and Ashburton moved out of the area. And then that project was picked up by a prospector who then sold it back to my founding director at the time, and that's how it's come back into Rincon. So there's a fair bit of knowledge that's been passed on from then to now, and we realised that this particular area, this project, is a real ripper. It's got huge potential for a discovery, an IOCG discovery, and not only that, rare earths as well.
Yeah, we'll go now straight into the drilling, because you've announced the market that there's a diamond and an RC drilling program going underway. So can you fill us in a little bit about what's been unfolding and maybe unpack some of the news flow that you've been bringing out to investors?
Sure. So about a year or so ago, well, actually well before then, in 2021, we did a massive review. We had external consultants review all our data, all the historic data, all the geochem, all the geophysics. And from that, we developed or identified two key targets below the Pokali system. Now, I say the system, and what Pokali is really, it's a big outcropping hill, and there's lots of veins and copper sitting at the surface, copper and as in malachite, the oxidised version. There's a lot of mineralisation there, and if you dive into the geochem, the geochem actually tells you it's all got the hallmarks of IOCG. Now, at the time, Ashburton, the questions they had, similar questions we've got right now, is, well, where's all that sufficient shallow mineralisation coming from? What's driving that system? So our geophysicists back then, in 2021, did all the gravity and the magnetics modelling and identified these targets. And there's two targets out of a multitude of targets that we're testing with the two deep diamond holes. We've completed one. We'll get to that a bit later. And we've got one other one to come. And then coincident with that second hole, we'll have an RC drilling program. And the RC and the diamond drilling is designed to, the diamond's testing targets that haven't been tested before to see if they have an influence or control or they're the source of all this mineralisation. The RC is going to do a similar thing, but test shallower targets, of course, being the RC. But nonetheless, the entire program is really to try and understand and build on what's been there, but ultimately it's all towards a discovery.
Yeah.
And we think we're not that far away.
Interesting. Well, we'll talk about the first drill hole because there was a bit of confusion in the market potentially about what it really meant. And we were just saying before, it's sort of trying to unpack it and communicate it to investors and potential listeners. So talking through that result that came back, what was going on with that first diamond drill hole?
So I'm not sure why people are confused. I think we've been very clear on our intent, our strategy and what we're trying to do. So as I said, two diamond holes are testing two targets, all right, based on gravity, magnetics and a host of other factors, including geochemistry and drill results in the past, which pointed to, well, we need to test this area that hasn't been tested and this area because that hasn't been tested. And the belief, they may or may not be the source of what's going on. If not, it doesn't matter. We've got several other like targets that we will test eventually. But the first drill hole we put up at Pokali North, that was one target, and the other one was Pokali East. We've completed the first drill hole at Pokali North. Now, that was a coincident magnetic gravity anomaly, also based on some really good geochemistry we had in that area. Copper, gold, tin, tungsten, and all our recent rare earth anomalism from rock chips is also from that area. So this hole had the potential to, figure out, it might have answered the question as to why all that's there. We're still working on that. But in the interim, in the hole completed, that hole came back with multiple zones over a 400 metre width down this hole, which only went to 600 metres. So actually from about 130 to 550 metres, there was at least 3 zones where we had anomalous copper all the way through. And the XRF confirmed that. And not only confirmed anomalous mineralisation, but actually, reported grades above %. Okay, so that's a really good sign. That's really good to have that spread of mineralisation across over 400 metres in that hole into a target which was tested is a really good result.
Yeah. Right.
Well, probably one of the better results I've had for a while. And not only do we know it's mineralised, and we've got more work to do to work on the geology and all that kind of stuff, and that'll come later. But just based on that, we think and we can infer almost that some of the other anomalism and drilling results along this northern side of Pokali Hill, we think that's all connected. That's all one particular type of unit, and it's a favourable unit that hosts copper mineralisation. So I guess the next step for that is to hone in, confirm the extremity, and hone in on where the grade's the highest, right?
Yeah.
And then build on it. Okay, and then slowly, it'll start to build up. It'll all make sense. It'll come out in the wash, and I think this is why I keep saying I think we're on the cusp of something really special at Pokali, and I'm quite excited.
Yeah, so then next steps, I mean, taking words just out of your mouth there.
Yeah.
There's a few more things that need to sort of unpack, including the other drilling campaign, which is happening at, I think it's drill hole 2, which I know investors, and you said before, is coming out soon. So looking at that one potentially now, but also what comes next, can you sort of outline what the next phases are or steps are to, I guess, progress these and potentially, as you said, build this picture of quite a unique, quite a decent deposit potentially?
Well, yeah, so the immediate next step is to get hole 2 done. Now, hole 2 is essentially testing the same geophysical signature, but at the other end. So there's a massive big signature up the northern side of this hill, and there's 2 sort of peaks in that signature, and that's what we're testing is the peaks. They're the shallowest points and the highest density points, I suppose, that we're testing. So the second hole is down towards Pokali East, and the good thing about that hole is it's actually in the area where a lot of the historical drilling by Ashburton focused, and so we expect that to be another good result, good hole. Will it be a hole that comes back with 400 metres at 1%? I don't know. That'd be awesome. We'd all like that, but I'm reasonably confident that we'll duplicate what we had in hole 1 or go better, because there's a lot more facts, I guess, that we know about that particular area as to the other area, Pokali North. So that's the next thing that's happening. Now, when we go back to start that, and we hope to be back doing that, starting that hole in maybe 2 weeks. Right, the rain's all stopped now in West Arunta.
And well, that's another point we're going to talk about.
Hopefully it's all drying out and we can get access in. So we're actually making plans for that to happen. So when we go back with the diamond hole, we've also got the RC rig following us in tail. Now, we've got 2,000 metres of RC drilling to do. There's 3 areas that we're focusing on. Again, Pokali North, Pokali East, extension, okay, to what's been drilled. And also we've got a zone, Pokali South Central, on the other side of the hill, where there's basically been very few holes in the past, but there's some geophysical signatures there that we think we should test to find out what that means.
Yeah, when I was looking on the announcements, you had the map. So for those that are trying to envision what it all looks like, recommend looking at those because that paints the picture a bit better. But you touched on there that the weather implication, and I know that's had a massive setbacks for a lot in that region. And you're talking about now planning around the next stages. Hopefully the weather hasn't or has sort of dissipated. It's back to normal drilling conditions. I mean, how has that really impacted some of the operations at Rincon?
Oh, look, it's just a slight delay, really. It's not costing us anything to have stopped. In fact, it saved us time. Well, it saved us money to actually evacuate and get out because we'd be sitting there waiting. Otherwise,
doing nothing.
That costs you. So it's quite unfortunate. The timing was just really bad. We just finished hole 1. We were just about to go to hole 2, and the next day we saw the radar and the weather, and we thought, oh shit, there's something
coming. Yeah,
there's a week of rain coming, and the access road from Alice Springs was almost about to reopen to heavy vehicles, which meant we could get our operator in to do all the sumps for the RC. And so we were waiting on that. We were just about to start hole 2, and we made the call. It's no point really, because if we start now, we don't know if the heavy vehicles are going to. Certainly, if that rain comes, we're not going to get any heavy vehicles in. We're running short of fuel, water. The Kirikara community was not getting supplies also. So we were running short of supplies. So the best option at the time was to get out and come back. And it'll only be a two-odd week delay, right? So I'm hoping now that the rain stopped, the sun's out, the wind's up, that it all dries out, and the Northern Territory Council, the government, the Alice Springs Council, whoever does the roads, can get out there and clean that section of track up and allow us to get heavy vehicles in. So then we can get the diamond rig back in, the RC rig in, and our operator to put the sumps in for our RC drilling.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that was at least from my sort of research people are naturally frustrated, being like, oh, we want to get the results out, and these things happen. And I think 2 weeks is not as major as things could be, like a couple of months, or for example, it just gets completely downpoured.
Yeah, the silver lining is we actually got the drill hole core out. All right, but then there's another flip side to that is it's actually stuck in Adelaide.
Yeah,
because the train line to Perth is closed because of flooding.
fair cop.
So that drill core will be in Perth probably later this week or early next week, and we'll do a few more things to that hole before we then cut it, sample it, send it to the lab for assaying, and then it'll probably be about a 4-week turnaround from assaying. So I'm thinking probably at least maybe five weeks.
Yeah, May-ish potentially.
Yeah. From the end of this week. Yeah,
Okay.
so 6 weeks.
Well,
We'll get results out.
Yeah, the point before, I want to lift it from the announcement you put out, which we just talked about, was based on the current information, it's plausible to intercept Pokali North and Pokali East may link up. And that's what you talked about before, about the potential decent size. I mean, proofing that concept up and also talking about how the implications that might have on that entire region. If you start with the first prong, I mean, how do you validate that and proof up that potential outcome?
Yeah, sure. So, well, one, we've got geology to look at now. So we've got drill hole geology, and we've got surface geology outcropping at Pokali North, and we've got historical data and outcropping geology at the other end. So we just we just go out and make double check the geology on the ground and make sure that that's the same geology as that. The unit's the same, but is that the same mineralised unit, right? Because it could be a separate horizon. So it'll be fairly easy to prove, and you may need to do another 2 or 3 holes in between Pokali North and Pokali East along that trend to confirm that. And I think when we do that, that's over 4 kilometres almost of strike of one particular unit or units in that cluster. That's mineralised essentially all the way through. So, if we can replicate intersections averaging 0.5% plus, like we get at Pokali East, that's really significant. And you just need to do sums on the back of a sheet of paper to figure out and that's enormous. And a lot of that, because it's an outcropping system, most of that copper actually comes right up to near surface. So,
Well, that's the second point there.
I don't need to say any more, right?
Yeah, that's the second point there about the scale of it, and I guess more notably, like how much that will impact that entire region. Because, I mean, talking about that scale as well, we won't discuss in depth the copper outlook, but there's definitely a use case for that growing and not many copper systems coming online. So when you're looking at that region and the potential of that unfolding, I mean, how much of a spotlight will that, again, re-shine on the West Arunta region?
Oh, look, I think if you can establish, a very large tonnage, moderate grade, and I'm talking, 0.3 to 0.8%, but if you've got the tonnes there, and clearly if we can confirm and prove 4 kilometre strikes with multiple horizons and an average grade of anywhere between 0.3 and 0.8, starting quite shallow, that's a very clear, in my view, an economic case for a potential massive open pit. Of course, as you go deeper, your grade has to increase. Because the costs obviously increase, but that's a way down the track.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got to prove concept and potential, and that's what these early phases of drilling are all about. Is trying to demonstrate the scale and what the potential grade of the copper might be across that scale. So that's what we're aiming to achieve. Now, I think Pokali East is, if we drill the hell out of Pokali East, I have no doubt that will be a deposit in its own right. But if we can, or then demonstrate that Pokali East somehow connects to Pokali North along this geological trend, that's
it's a massive
that's
amount.
exceptional.
Yeah.
And then there's all the south side of the hill that's basically had little to no exploration, which the potential's no less than what we already know on Pokali North and East. So that becomes your next part of the strategy. All right, so work on East, North, and then move around, start adding. Okay, so look, I think it's a wonderful story. It's a journey of discovery, and I think people should be wrapped with what's happening.
Well, I mean, when I was looking at it, like the land mass is not small either. It's a massive amount of land to explore, and who knows what else is out there. And I think that's the excitement of exploration period. And I mean, this is me looking now at the second drilling is more focused on the IOCG copper gold mineralisation. Is that part of the RC campaign, or is that RC drilling campaign?
So look, there's no IOCG area and and others.
Sorry, I should have phrased that.
The same. It's all the same system. There's different parts to it, right?
Yeah.
And what we know about Pokali North, which is still part of the same IOCG system, is that there's some rare earth mineralisation there that we've identified, and so there's an added potential of something at that end that may have something to do with that rare earths.
Okay,
that's another part. But we know from WA1 success. All right, you can drill an IOCG target and you come up with a mineralised carbonatite. So they're the same target. You drill for an IOCG and you might have rare earths. So every drill hole into an IOCG target is effectively a drill hole into a rare earths target or a carbonatite target. So there's no this target, that style, this style. They're IOCG / carbonatite targets. They're one and the same. So drill hole number 2 is going to be testing the same concept as drill hole number 1.
Yeah.
It's just a different part of the system, right? It's just that drill hole number 1 had the added rare earths floating around.
Yeah.
Drill hole number 2, from what we know, because there's been more work there, has a much stronger signature of IOCG, right? Only because there's drill holes that confirm it and prove it.
Yeah, history shows it.
Pokali North just hasn't had that level of exploration yet, so it'll be the same. I think it'll be the same.
So, I mean, on the note board, there's a fair bit of activity. I can see why, as you said at the outset, the focus is on the West Arunta region because there is just so much to explore. But if you want to quickly, highlight really over the next 6 to 12 months what investors can expect out of the news flow coming from West Arunta, and then we can maybe touch on some of the other parts of it because, talking about this now, it's a massive opportunity. And then, as you alluded to at the outset, and we talked about previously, there's still a lot of other packages within Rincon as well.
Oh, totally. Well, from our immediate program, there's going to be news flow, quite regularly from our activities over the first 6 months of this year, probably going into the third quarter. And no doubt the results and what we're doing now will drive further work going into the second half of the year. So there's no specific programs for second half, but that'll unfold as we move through this first round of work programs. So there'll be a lot of news flow throughout, probably the whole year for West Arunta. And then, South Telfer, right? We're reviewing what we've done at South Telfer to work out what our next steps are. There could be news flow about that. And then also Laverton, right? Gold price is rising.
Yeah, well, it's broken
We've
out
got a project in the heart of a tier 1 gold district, and we've got to go and do some work there. So there might be some news about that. So I think across the 3 projects, but particularly West Arunta, there should be quite regular news flow throughout the whole year, but more of it will be the second half, the first half of the year.
No, exciting. And from memory as well, there was a recent capital raising recently to help finance and pursue these projects. So I'm assuming that's all just going straight into the ground from the sounds of what we've talked about.
Yeah, pretty much. So we did a small raising in January, and the reason for that was whilst we were out there doing the diamond drilling, we thought, well, we had RC drilling planned that we were going to start a little bit later, but we thought, well, let's bring it forward, increase it. So we need a bit more money to do that. That's what that raising was for, and that's why we're doing this RC drilling campaign in the next few weeks, as opposed to second quarter or towards the middle of the year.
When we last spoke, you talked about the team that was around you, and I recommend people go back and listen to it because, as you said, the story of how West Arunta sort of folded in is a fascinating one. But if you quickly go over again some of the people that are surrounded you and maybe a bit of their experience within the mining realm.
On the technical side, I have one geologist who works with me, but I also have a team of consultants. Okay, and it's consultants for geochemistry, geophysics, and geological mapping, basically. So, and they're all highly experienced in their fields, and I consult and talk to them all the time. In fact, I've got the geophysicists looking at the new gravity data we've just collected.
Yes, well, actually, we can go into that in a second. Yeah.
And I've got another consultant looking at the geology, looking at the core in conjunction with my geologist, to just make sure we're getting all that right and we're understanding what we're doing geologically with that drill hole. So that's how we operate. That's how we keep our costs down, and it works well. And they're all from the exploration discovery background. So that's the team you need to be around. I need to be around. That's obviously my area of experience.
Yeah, the geophysics reminded me as well because that's another part of it with the three key targets with K1, K2, and I think some of the consensus online was maybe refreshing listeners on why these targets were chosen to begin with. So can you talk to us about why these ones were selected and when all that information comes back? Yeah,
sure. So and I'll go back to 2001 when we did this initial review of the project and the geophysics, and so our geophysicists compiled all the free open source
everything that's already been done and available,
and came up with a number of anomalies or target anomalies that had coincident signatures of gravity and magnetics. Okay, and they're the two things. The coincidence of those two types of anomalies is what you tend to target for IOCG and, of course, carbonatites in this particular region. So we had a number of targets, including all the ones we've got at Pokali. They were all identified early in 2021. But we recognised that the ones to the east, K1, K2, Passel, was all based on relatively open space data, broad data. So the resolution and the confidence in those targets was not as good as what you might get at Pokali, where a lot more work had been done. So one of the first things we did was an airborne EM. Now, the airborne EM was really, what's potentially sitting, say, in the top 200 metres, that's electrically conductive. It might be a big sulphide body or the likes. That identified a number of subtle anomalies. And the only reason I say that is because, as I said, it really only looked to the top 200 metres. So the anomalies that were seen could potentially represent something quite deeper. But the EM just won't give you any clarity on that. No. So I thought, okay, well, we had some semi-coincident gravity, magnetic, and EM, Passel. In fact, the very eastern anomaly in Passel is one of those. But we still had the other ones which didn't have coincident EM because, it just didn't see anything. But we still had the gravity and magnetics. So we thought, well, we need to, in order to improve our confidence in those targets before we decide we want to go drill them, we've got to do some more geophysics. So that's why we've gone out and done some detailed ground geophysics. And in the instance of Passel, we've gone and done some seismic as well because we do know that in that area there's some paleo channels and stuff like that which could interfere with geophysics. Okay. So the seismic will tell us.
Sort of alleviate any of the doubts.
Yeah, it'll pull out what's potentially related to a paleo channel or not, and then we can figure out what's a real target, what isn't a real target, and then we can work out how, when to drill these targets, what method, how deep do we need to drill. All that kind of stuff. So that's what we've done with those targets. So now they've sort of been elevated to the next step.
Yeah.
That's all being reviewed right now. I really like the Passel East, or the easternmost anomaly at Passel. I think that's a real ripper, and no doubt there'll be more said about that later. So that's that. We've done a similar thing at Pokali. We've done detailed gravity. So that's detailed on detailed. So we've got some really good gravity data now. And we're just about to kick off our IP. Okay, that's dipole IP survey. That starts probably in a week. And that's going to do some infill lines to some historical IP data we've got and really, the 3D geology and
paint the real picture of what it is there.
It should really start to take shape as to what's going on underneath.
And the timeline for a lot of this to sort of start coming out from an investment point of view and a news flow?
Well, like I said, most of the results and the news flow from that's going to be over at least the next month or two.
Yeah.
In fact, a lot of news flow will probably come out in the next month or two as we start to re-drill, and we've got the interpretation of geophysics, both the gravity and IP and seismic, all that'll come out. The geophysicists are all working on that right now. So, there's a lot happening. And then, so that's all that work I've just spoke about really is just our one main lease, which has the Pokali prospect. We've now got a bigger portfolio of tenements outside of that, which we've got to start working on, when they're granted and when we get the access. So we've got to start building targets on those tenements as well. So there's probably more geophysics to be done on those tenements later in the year, site reconnaissance, mapping, sampling, all that kind of stuff. So there's
no shortage of stuff to be done, and all at various sort of stages as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So there's a lot of grassroots stuff to be done, and then there's the drilling definition type stuff we're doing at Pokali. So it's a consistent timeline of work, activity, and of course news flow.
Yeah, and I mean, you said at the beginning there's almost a smorgasbord of resource potential. There's gold, uranium, rare earths, and copper, and who knows what else until we really start getting those perfect pictures painted. But I mean, that does give you a fair bit to think about. But also, as we know, how do you potentially specialise? So, without putting words in your mouth, I mean, do you see a potential direction as to what happens, or is it again makes sense, all dependent on what the drilling results come back with?
Well. WA1 had full intentions of being an IOCG explorer and to discover, but now they're a niobium resource drilling a niobium rare earth deposit. So their strategy changed completely on that discovery. Otherwise, I have no doubt they'd still be doing what we're doing.
Yeah,
and that could easily happen to us. We might get so far down the line with Pokali and then suddenly drill another target and it's a carbonatite.
Yeah.
Just like Looney. I think that'll create a complication, but it's a good problem to have.
I was about to say, it's a good one. It's a very good one to have.
Yeah. And so, but the reality is, Rincon is a copper gold critical minerals explorer. So it's all the same. Just have two different styles of deposits.
Yeah, of course.
We go back to South Telfer and we find the massive gold discovery, right? Well, then you got something else. So then you got the gold, copper gold, and maybe a rare earth deposit.
Yeah.
Who knows? I'm not saying that's going to happen.
No, but again, it does. The smorgasbord is out there.
But
it's a fair bit.
When you're at our phase of the game, you're exploring for something that's economic and that's going to create value for shareholders.
Yeah.
Right? That's
the aim of the game.
Until that happens. Yeah, you basically got to, you open yourself to all opportunities.
Yeah, you're pivoting when. Yeah. And for those that are wanting to stay on top of it, because you said there's going to be a lot of news flow coming out, drilling and geophysics are just strategy, and even potentially get in contact with yourself. I mean, where can investors go if they want to learn more and follow and keep up to date with all these updates?
Sure. I mean, there's our website is the first point. Go to the website. We're on Twitter. Oh, not Twitter. X.
Yeah. I think it's always going to be known Twitter.
I call it Twitter. I'm sticking with Twitter.
Yeah.
LinkedIn. I've got a company. Well, the company's got LinkedIn and X. I have a more dominant LinkedIn profile. You can find me there. You can email contacts on the website. You can get that off the announcements anyway.
Yeah.
I'm happy to take calls and emails from anyone and everyone. That's my job. So I don't mind. And if investors or people listening want more questions answered, I encourage you to get in contact with me.
Yeah.
Because, this is probably not the forum for me to get into detail around particular questions.
Yeah. And I think it's all based on the person. Yeah.
A personal connection. I can explain it specifically, so I'll answer your specific question instead of more generally. So, that's
Any
how
of
you
those
get in
channels.
contact with us. And, I encourage people to do that.
Yeah. No, I've sort of very something from the outset when I spoke with you. Very transparent, very happy to have long conversations with investors, no matter where they are. So implore them all to do that. It sounds like there's going to be a lot coming and, listed on the ASX RCR for those that want to put it on their watch list. But, thank you so much, Gary, for taking the time to speak with me on the show.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, good to be back. And
busy time ahead.
Yeah, busy time. Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Thanks for listening to the Marketable podcast. Please remember that the topics and stocks discussed in this podcast are not financial advice. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to like, share, and follow. You can follow the Marketable on all our socials and keep up to date with global market insights.